And then we're good to go. Okay, thanks for joining me. Great to have people from the US joining me. I'm really keen to, I feel that what I offer is applicable wherever you live. Because I work remotely, because I can do things like this over Zoom or other platforms, doesn't matter where we all live. So I'm thrilled to be able to meet new people in different countries, and I really hope that I can give you something of value to you. This webinar came about because I did a survey recently of animal professionals, so people who work either full-time or part-time with horses or other animals. You'll see as we get a bit further on that my background is with horses, so I will tend to say horses, but what I'm teaching really, it doesn't matter what animals you're working with. By the way, since you are all in the States, I hope you understand my accent okay. Please tell me if you need me to slow down or if I use words that are alien to you. Let me know. So I did a survey with animal professionals, and I was really interested to find out how much animal professionals are aware of the intuition that they get or use in their work, whether they use animal communication at all in their work, whether they believe animal communication could help them in their work. And I also asked what their biggest challenge was. And so that's why the title of this webinar is what it is, how to tune out the owners and tune into the horses. Because the number one challenge that people told me they had was the owners. Now, this was largely horse professionals, equine professionals. Maybe it's different with other species, but horse people have quite a big problem with the owners that they're working for. Of 125 people that answered that question for me, 38%, and that was the highest percentage, 38% said their biggest challenge was the owners. The next 28%, the problem was the weather, and it's winter where you are, and in the UK where the other biggest response on that question was weather. It's summer here in New Zealand. Sorry, beautiful. So I'm not having that problem right now, but there's a limit to what I can do about the weather for you, but maybe I can give you some hints and tips about how to handle owners better and help you in your job. So that's how this webinar came about. So we're going to be looking at your market and the owners that you're working with and how to handle them. In part 2, we're going to look at deepening your connection with the animals that you're working with, and then a little bit about how I might be able to help you further. So who am I? Since you don't know me, you've already picked up that I'm Scottish. I've lived in New Zealand for 13 years now. My husband is a Kiwi. And it is summer here right now, and I absolutely love it. And seriously, a Scottish winter would kill me right now. And whatever weather you guys are getting right now would kill me. Can't go back to that. We don't get that extreme weather where I live here in New Zealand. We barely get frost in winter where I am. So it's really good, and nice hot summers. And you may have already picked this up from what I was saying about the survey that I did and the percentage of people that said owners were their problem. I really love statistics and spreadsheets, and I'm a bit geeky like that. When in my professional life, before I worked, before I earned money with animals, I was in IT. So I guess that is possibly why I'm a bit geeky about and analytical about things. But I like to be able to measure what's going on and you know, get a feel for the patterns that I see in my work or that other people are dealing with. I've had horses all my adult life, Before I bought my first horse, because my daddy wouldn't buy me a pony, I started doing my British Horse Society exams. So very proper, very English, if that makes sense. But the first horse that I bought was a quarter horse, and so I switched to Western riding and did only Western in Scotland for about 15 years. Teaching, training, starting horses, organising clinics and competing. When I moved to New Zealand, I started teaching biomechanics, horse and rider biomechanics, and I did that full time for about 10 years, running clinics in New Zealand and Australia. And I am, or certainly was, probably lapsed now, but I was a certified equine body worker too. Along the way, I did Reiki 1 and 2, and I tried numerous times to meditate in all different ways, and I couldn't do it. And I really just thought, oh, I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't. I kind of wrote it off, can't do it. And I also, 20 years ago maybe, attended a couple of animal communication workshops in person, like weekend workshops, which I really liked. But I found that when I went home and was on my own, I couldn't replicate what I had learned. So that's kind of where I was at, what my background is, until about 5 years ago, when a friend here in New Zealand invited me to a meditation group, and I said, oh yeah, I'll give it one last go. I really want to be able to do that. And there was something about that group that just exploded everything for me. So I've been doing animal communication seriously for 5 years and full time for coming up for 3 years. Best job in the world. Now, hopefully you guys all say that about your jobs too. And there's just a little testimonial that I got this week from one of my clients, which I was very flattered to receive. So I am actually, believe it or not, I am actually an introvert. I'm not comfortable speaking in large groups of people, but I realized early on that you can't just help the animals, you have to address the owners too. You have to teach them what you're teaching their pets or their horses. And that means you have to be able to communicate and become a teacher effectively, whether you like it or not. And so that's, I've been doing that for 15 years, I guess. And so that's why I can do what I do, and it keeps me going. And I enjoy sharing what I've learned along the way. So what about you? Well, you work full or part-time with horses or other animals. If any of you guys don't work full or part-time, if it's just a hobby, let me know. You probably get gut feelings when you're working with animals, or some kind of intuitive hit. You possibly do get frustrated, as those other people said, that owners make things difficult or don't give you the full story about what's going on with the animal. Maybe they're not telling you important things about its health or its previous training or any vices it might have, for instance. And I hope that because you're here, it means you wish you were able to find out more about the horse or animal that you're working with, and would love to be able to explain things to them better. So I hope that's all resonating with you. If there's some other burning reason why you're drawn to this webinar, let me know in the chat box. So stage one, knowing your market. So as I said just previously, I think that most animal professionals, we just want to work with the animals, don't we? We kind of prefer not to have anything to do with the owners. I know that was me in the beginning. I would have been happy for people to hand me a horse, leave me to work with it for 4 weeks or however long it was, come back, pick it up and go away, and me not have to speak to them at all. That would be my perfect scenario. But you learn pretty quickly that that's not going to work, because if the owner doesn't know what you taught the animal, or how things are going to work from now on, then it's not going to work out, is it? We tend to, animal professionals, unless you're in a very structured business, like maybe the dog grooming, particularly if you work in like one of those big pet stores like Animates or something, I don't know what they'd be called in the States, then maybe your business is more structured. But if you're self-employed, we tend to sort of take whatever business comes our way. And we're often introverts who just love working with the animals, don't like confrontation, and don't really know how to put ourselves forwards and promote ourselves. So when I did that survey, the sorts of things that people said they were having owner problems around were only getting half the story, owners who expect too much too soon, owners who tell you how to do your job, who don't do their homework or aren't committed to the process, who maybe are too inexperienced for their horses, and owners who think they know it all. So if this is resonating, tell me in the chat box, what's your biggest owner problem? Or are owners not a problem to you at all? Let me know. So we're going to start by having a look at your market. And I'm going to pose quite a lot of questions here, or things for you to think about. So again, feel free to type in any light bulb moments you have, or what your experiences are. Just let us know. So we're going to look at who you're working for, how visible you are to them, how to attract the owners that you want to work with, and how to handle the difficult ones. So who is your ideal client? Do you know? Are you marketing towards them? Do you have a specific niche? I think Americans say niche, don't they? Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Do you have a specialty? Is your preference to work with problem horses, or a specific discipline, or a specific breed? Or do you just take any business that comes your way? Do you ever take business just because you need the money and then maybe regret it afterwards? So think about where your skills are, what animals, what discipline, what breed, what species, and think about the owners too. What kind of people do you enjoy working for? And start focusing on them. Does that sound too easy? Does it sound scary? You might think, well, if I narrow things down like that, I'm going to be ruling out everyone else and I'm going to lose business. I won't have as much money coming in. I need to keep it broad in order to get enough business. But in actual fact, that's kind of a mindset issue. That's kind of a fear issue. And actually, if you specialize you'll be seen as more of an expert, and that raises you up. That puts you in a much better position in terms of visibility and in terms of people seeing your worth. And in actual fact, if you specialize in that way, take me for instance, I'm an animal communicator, my background is horses, and probably 75%, I told you I like statistics, right? Probably 75% of my business is with horses, horse communication sessions. When I first started out and I switched from being a riding instructor, clinician, body worker to animal communication, 95% of my business was with horses, because that's where my existing client base was. But I still got people asking me to talk to dogs and cats and all sorts of other animals. So just because I'm not targeting those people or advertising directly to those people doesn't mean I'm not going to get that business. In actual fact, people say, oh, she did a really good job with my horse, I'm going to get her to do my dogs and cats too. And so I get that additional business. So don't be afraid to specialize. How visible are you to those people? How do you advertise? Do you advertise? How do you market yourself? Do you have a Facebook business page? Do you have a website? Now, I will say it's not necessary for you to have a business page or a website in order to make money. If you're getting business without either of those things, you might be doing just fine. But they're kind of an additional. You don't need to spend a lot of money on them. You don't need them to get started. But they are useful as a way of promoting yourself. They're kind of a shop front, if you like, where people can come and check you out. And that can be really useful. So think about how your clients find you. Particularly, how do those clients that you really like working with find you? Do you know? Because if you don't know, how are you going to get more of them? So it might be worth starting to ask them. Every time you get a new inquiry, ask them how they heard about you, and start taking note of that sort of thing. Whether it's in a notebook or a little spreadsheet or whatever, track that sort of information. Knowledge is power, right? You need to know that stuff if you want to be able to use it and maximize it. As a bit of an example, I've been an animal communicator for nearly 3 years. I've only been doing the social media thing for just over a year. So let's say the whole of 2018, to simplify. Prior to that, I had a website. It was a bit rubbish because I hadn't really switched it over from what I used to do to what I was doing now. So it was a bit of a mishmash. And my Facebook business page was, I would post something once in a while, and usually only when I was trying to sell something or make some money. So it was, meh. Last year, I dived seriously into social media, Facebook primarily. And when I look at my statistics, remember, I love my statistics, and here's why. Because they give me some measurable information. When I looked back at my stats, in 2017, when I was just kind of moseying along, wondering how to build my business, 3% of my business came from Facebook. In 2018, when I looked at my stats at the end of the year, 18% of my business came from Facebook. That's a 15% increase, which is pretty huge. And so that's confirmation to me that it was worth doing, that it's worth me carrying on with what I was doing and building it, because I'm building business just by putting myself out there and being consistent with what I post on Facebook, and by doing webinars like this and giving people lots of value. It's a way of you getting to know me, know whether you like me or not, whether you would like to work with me or have me work for you, whether I'm of any value to you. So it's something to think about, and also a good reason for tracking where you're getting your business from, where your best clients come from, all that sort of information, so that you know how to get more of that. So how do you attract more of the clients that you really want? The ones that are going to give you no grief, pay you what you're worth, pay you on time, all of that, right? Give you repeat business, recommend you to all their friends. You know, they're the best, aren't they? Well, first is being known for your specialty and advertising that. Thinking about where you advertise. Do you know, so again, do you know where your business is coming from? And do you know where your ideal clients hang out? Is your business coming from that poster you put up in the local tack shop? Or is it from people who saw you riding your horse at that competition last weekend? Or is it from word of mouth? If you know that, you can get more of that. You can, for instance, if you figure out that most of your business is coming from client referrals, you could do a special, say, for a week or month, whatever you decide, and say to your existing clients, for every referral that turns into business that you give me this month, I'll give you 10% off your next lesson or your next dog grooming session, or you know, whatever it is. You decide what the bonus that you're going to give them is, but they're thrilled because they're getting some kind of value or freebie from you, and they're referring more people your way. Do you use testimonials? Do you get testimonials or feedback from your clients? If you do a really good job grooming that dog or training that horse or whatever it was, and the owner says, oh, that was great, oh, my dog looks fantastic, or gosh, my horse is behaving so much better, get them to ask them straight away, could you text that to me right now while it's fresh in your mind, so I've got it, you know, a hard copy of it? Or could you email that to me when you get home, or send that to me in a message? Ask them to write it down. Get that that proof, if you like. You may have to ask people whether they mind you attaching their name to a testimonial or not. I find in my business, not everyone wants their name attached to it. So that little testimonial that I posted a few slides ago, you would have noticed that I grayed out the person's name. That's how I handle it. If it's a personal message that someone sent me, or I know or ask them and they tell me that they'd rather not their name be attached to it, then I just grey it out, or I'll copy and paste the testimonial part of it and use that on my website or on my Facebook page. So start asking for testimonials and use them. Think about it. When was the last time you bought something animal related, especially animal service related, you know, something you were going to get done for or to your animal? When's the last time you bought that without knowing anything about that person, without having any kind of recommendation or reading up to see what other people said about them, or, you know, stalking them a little bit to see whether you were going to like them or not? We don't do that, do we? We want to know that person before we trust our animal to them. So you need to do the same. Use your testimonials, use that feedback. Let people see what others are saying about your work. If you do have a Facebook business page, you could post before and after shots of your work. So the dog grooming, Janet, you could post a photo of what the dog looked like when it first arrived and what it looked like after you had groomed it. If you clip horses in wintertime, same thing. Show a before and after, how fabulous they look afterwards, and then write what the owner said and how pleased they were. You could post little videos of you working, do a little Facebook Live, or record something separate and upload it to Facebook. People want to see you and get to know you. Think about it. It's why you're here, right? You're wondering who I am and whether I'm a good fit for you and can I help you at all? There's the proof right there. You have to remember that you're running a business. It's not a hobby, is it? It's a business. You're trying to make a living. You need to be the CEO. You need to do all the jobs. Unless you're at a level where you can afford to pay someone else to run your Facebook page for you and do all your advertising for you and all of that, I'm assuming you're not. So you need to do all of those jobs. You need to wear all of those hats. And social media is king, basically. That's why I really immersed myself in it for the whole of last year, to see, even although it felt really uncomfortable to me in the beginning. So here's the thing. Until Easter last year, so that's less than a year, I had never taken a selfie. Never. It was not something that appealed to me. It was not something I felt comfortable with. It was not something I felt any need to do or share with anyone else. I would have avoided that forever if I could have. But when it comes to social media, you just have to put yourself out there. You just kind of have to suck it up and get comfortable with it. So I think of it as a bit of a game. I feel like I'm playing a game. This is a bit of a mask. I just have to step up, put myself out there, and put myself out there in a way that is going to hopefully attract people to what I can do for them. So I hope that helps you. And how do you handle the difficult owners? Well, I would suggest setting boundaries up front. You could get them to sign a contract up front. Now, I know the States is way more litigious than any other country in the world, so where you stand with that legally, I'm not sure. And it's entirely possible in the States that you can get kind of pro formas, that those kind of contracts already exist, that you could get someone to sign before you start working with them. That's always an option. State your requirements. Make sure they know up front how you work and what you need from them and what you're going to provide. Don't make promises you can't keep. You might set rules up front, like you're welcome to come and watch me working with your horse, but I'd really appreciate it if you didn't talk while I'm working, and I'll come and answer your questions at the end, for instance. That's perfectly reasonable. Just tell them up front. You might say, if I'm going to train your horse for you, the requirement is that you pay up front and that you come once a week so that I can teach you what I'm teaching your horse. And you do kind of need to be determined about it, if you like, and stick to your guns. Here's how I work. Now, again, you might think, oh, if I get really stroppy with people like that, I'm going to turn them off and they're going to go and work with someone else instead because it's easier. Well, and I doubt it. It's unlikely because they came to you for a reason. Because of the way that you are, or you're going to promote yourself and be seen as a professional who delivers XYZ results and who is really good at ABC, that's why they're coming to you in the first place. So why would they go to someone else? You just need to stick to your guns and say, this is how I'm going to work. If you're having a problem with owners who only want to pay you $30 when what you charge is $50 or whatever the numbers are, if you accept that and allow them to set the terms and knock your price down, that's what you're going to keep getting. So be really clear and definite about what your requirements are and what you're okay with accepting and not okay with accepting. Because remember, you get what you settle for. So if you're aiming to get a better quality of clients, or those owners that are easier to deal with, or always pay on time or whatever, then go and look for those ones and treat them that way, and those are the ones you'll get. I know that sounds too easy, but that's kind of that's how you need to think. It's a mindset thing as much as anything else. Keep your owners informed, your clients informed. And again, you can specify up front how you're going to do that. Are you going to text them every day and let them know what's happening, or send them an email every night or once a week? Or are you going to ask them to call you 2 nights a week so you can fill them in with what's happening? Keep them informed. The good stuff and the bad stuff. If you have a setback with the horse or the animal, or if something happens or things are going slower than you thought, keep your owners informed. It's always better to know what's going on than to get some bad surprise down the line. When it comes to where you work, there are also things to consider. So if you work in at yards where there's always disruptions going on in the background, or people chattering that you find distracting, or you are allowed to work at one end of the arena, but there's always people doing weird stuff with their horses up the other end that upsets the horse you're trying to work with, whatever it is. Or maybe it's just that the owner talks all the time, or whatever it is. Maybe you are a body worker and you know that this particular yard you need to go to work at today always has really bad energy and nobody likes going there. Consider all those things. How can you improve that? How can you control that? Again, it's partly about you being proactive, or deciding what your working conditions are going to be. If working at that particular yard that always has bad energy doesn't feel good to you and you feel like you're not doing your best work there, you can't really help the animals there because of what's going on, maybe you just decide not to take business from that place. Or maybe you ask the people to bring their horses somewhere else so you can work on them, so you don't have to go there. You know, think about what you can do. Maybe you arrange to go to that place between a certain time when you know that it's going to be quieter and you'll be able to work better. So think about how you can manage your working environment to minimize owner problems or environmental problems. There are things you can do to tune out some of that stuff. Breathing is a big one. So taking long, deep breaths and getting into a rhythmic breathing pattern can really help to ground you, to settle your mind and help you to tune out external stuff. So before you go anywhere near the horse or animal, get yourself in a good place before you start working. So that's the owner stuff and the sort of marketing stuff. How's this sounding to you all so far? Is this helpful so far? Any light bulbs coming on? Anything, any useful information to you there? Janet says yes, very helpful. Cool. And feel free to ask questions. There's only 3 of you there, so do ask questions if you have any. Okay, so step 2 then is the animals themselves. Let's look at deepening your connection with the animals that you're working with. So how to deepen your connection, how to increase your intuition, how to identify messages that you're getting, and how to increase your animal communication skills. So deepening your connection. As I said before, the number one thing has to be being in the moment, tuning out all that other stuff that might be going on. So checking your breathing, checking where your focus is, what's going on in your brain. Are you just thinking, oh my God, I wish he would shut up. What on earth is that person doing up there? What did he just do to that horse? Oh, you know, or, oh, what time is it? I've still got 10 sessions to do today, or I've only got half an hour and then I need to go and pick up my kid from kindergarten or do the shopping. Whatever it is, all those things that are in your head, we need to be able to clear that mind chatter, soften your brain, settle yourself, ground yourself. Feels good just to take a deep breath. So be in the moment with the animal that you're working with. If time is an issue for you because you've got so many other things to do today, maybe you will, I think most people who work with animals get a pretty good internal clock going on. When I was teaching, I always knew when it was about 10 minutes to the hour and time to start wrapping up the lesson. But if you find that you're tending to go over time or lose track of time, then set an alarm on your phone or your watch, or get someone to give you a shout at a certain, 5 minutes before or 10 minutes before you need to finish. If you find that owners are always, asking too many questions, then make a point of finishing the work that you're doing with the animal, even 15 minutes before time, so that there's plenty of time for them to ask their questions. That reminds me one problem I had often, and I never, to be honest, fully resolved this, but I'll give you this advice anyway, and maybe you'll be able to do it better than I did. But I had several clients who, when I was going to properties teaching one-to-one lessons on biomechanics or whatever, who would wait to pay me until the end of the lesson. Now that I don't have too much problem with at all, if they've got the money in their pocket and they're going to just hand it over. But every now and then you'd get the, we're back on owner problems again, aren't we? Every now and then you'd get someone who, you know, you'd finish the lesson, it's time and I need to go, I need to get on to the next place on my next lesson, but they say, oh, I'll just go and get your money, and you have to hang around and wait while they get off their horse, lead their horse out, tie it up, oh, I'll just take his saddle off, faff about and pat him and give him a carrot, and then they have to go to their car to find their money, and oh, and you're tearing your hair out thinking, oh, I've got to get to the next place. So if you know you have owners like that, maybe tell them in advance, if you could have your payment ready for me at the beginning so that we can make the most of the time we've got, I'd really appreciate it. There's an additional little tip for you. Let's see. So yeah, the other thing about deepening your connection with the animals would be really paying attention to what they're telling you, particularly at the start of the session. When you first approach them, what feel do you get from them? Do they appear to be anxious today, or fearful, sad even, or angry? Notice what the initial, whether it's visual or feeling that you get from the animal is when you first approach them. That's going to tell you something about the direction you might need to take in how you handle them today, or what techniques you use today, or what training you do today. And maybe, just maybe, there might be occasions where you need to say to the owner, you know what, he's not in a good space today and we need to just leave this till tomorrow. They're paying you to work with their animal. They want you to do a good job. If they're putting pressure on you to do the work anyway, even although it's not in the animal's best interest, they may not be your ideal client. And so again, I wouldn't feel too badly about losing that business if that's what it came to. But hopefully most owners would appreciate that actually you are reading their animal and you're doing the best for the animal. There are ways that you can send or impart information to the animal that you may or may not already be doing. Again, let me know if you are or aren't already doing these things. Verbalizing what you're going to do in today's session is an easy thing that anyone can do. Now, I'm not talking about a stream of inane chatter. Please don't do that. But verbally explaining to the horse or dog or whatever animal, here's what we're going to do today, can be really reassuring and clarifying for them. So whether it's just saying, hi sweetie, how are you today? We're going to, today we're going to work on such and such, or I just need you to stand like a nice, sweet little girl while I just trim your legs for you. It's not going to hurt. It might tickle a little bit. I'll be as careful as I can, and you're going to feel so much better afterwards. Or we're going to work on trailer loading today, and all I need you to do is step your front feet onto the ramp and stand quietly. Wait for me to ask you to back off, and we'll do that a couple of times, and that's all we're doing today. Just explain to them what's in store for them, not so much what your expectations are, but what they can expect today. It can be really reassuring, and it also transmits to them a picture of what's going to happen in this session. You can also deliberately send them pictures. You can visualize how this session is going to go, or what it is that you're going to do with them today. So top athletes use visualization a lot, whether it's Venus Williams visualizing her perfect tennis serve over and over and over. So her body learns exactly what that feels like just by her visualizing it. I'm sure riders like, well, here in New Zealand it would be Mark Todd. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of him. I don't know who any of the big American riders are. If he was riding at badminton, doing that scary cross-country event, you can bet they walk the course first. They measure everything up, they eyeball it, they get a good feel of it, and then they visualize themselves and their horse riding that course, and the perfect course and the perfect line between the jumps. And visualizing it solidifies it into their cells, into their muscle memory, and transmits it to the horse too. So what you can do is deliberately have a picture in your mind of what's going to happen today, or how you want the animal to behave. So with the trailer loading, you could spend a few minutes before the session visualizing that horse, that trailer, you standing in a certain position, you asking them to walk on and them doing it so quietly and so perfectly, and waiting till you ask them to move, blah, blah, blah. Here's how it's going to go. And imagine sending that picture to that horse. It sounds a bit out there, but then if you weren't a little bit into out there stuff, you probably wouldn't be here, right? So give it a go. What have you got to lose? And it might just make the difference between them, it's my dog in the background, between them being prepared for what you're going to do today or not. The other thing you can do to deepen your connection is ask a question and feel in your body for the answer to that question. So whether it's closing your eyes and maybe touching the animal and saying, how are you today? And feeling, you know, do you get a good feeling or a not so good feeling? Or are you in pain? Or are you ready to proceed? Any number of questions. Start asking a question and noticing, you know, they can't verbalize their answers to us, right? They can't speak, but they're masters at communicating to us in all the other ways, using their body language, using psychic or clairvoyant messages, sending pictures. If you start tuning into that, you might be surprised what communications or messages you do get from them. So start asking them questions in your mind and noticing what kind of answer you get from them. When it comes to increasing your intuition, how many of you guys already get intuitive hits or some kind of gut feeling when you're working with animals? Is it a regular thing or once in a while? What percentage of the time, do you know? Do you pay attention to that or not? I think it's really common for people who work with animals to work very intuitively, to do things and almost automatically, subconsciously, if you like, and not even necessarily know that we did it, never mind why we did it. Janet says, more often as I practice more. Exactly, Janet. It's definitely a practiced skill. So start noticing, registering when you get those intuitive hits, when you get those gut feelings. You might get into the habit of saying, oh, I just got a gut feeling. Oh, that was my intuition kicked in just then. Actually acknowledge it right there and then. The more you acknowledge it, the more you're noticing it, the more it'll happen, because you're registering it. If you think about riders, really good riders, horse riders who you watch them and you go, wow, I couldn't even see what he did just then. How did he do that? And maybe you ask them and they can't tell you. Or have you come across instructors who you see them on a horse and they're fabulous and they can get it to do anything, or they can get your horse to do anything, but they can't tell you how to do it. They don't know how they did it, or they don't know how to put it into words. It's because they're working on that intuitive level and they have that that skill that they don't know how to put into words. So if you start noticing it and start putting words to it, it'll happen more and more. Danielle says, try to pay attention to it. Definitely feel it, but can feel insecure and doubtful when someone like an owner justifies away from it. Yes, absolutely. That's a biggie, Danielle. And so I would say, particularly in the beginning, so whether you're a beginner or a novice at feeling these things, or maybe you just feel that sort of insecurity of, oh, I think I'm making it up, or I'm scared to say anything because they'll say blah, blah, blah. That's all very valid, and that's we've all been there. I would say, when it comes to what other people might say, I would say stay quiet about it for now. Acknowledge it to yourself and start recognizing it more and acting on it more. But you don't need to explain yourself to them. Most owners really are only interested in what they see happening in front of them and the results that they're going to get. They don't necessarily, you don't need to explain yourself to them unless they're asking, how did you do that? Or how did you know to do that? And then be upfront. You could say, I just had a feeling. I just felt that was the thing that was required right now. Often people feel when they're first starting this kind of journey that they don't know how to trust it. They don't know how to know whether they're just making it up or not. I say you're not making it up. You're absolutely not. How could you be? I believe it all, basically. So just start being really curious about it and inviting it more, and it will get stronger and stronger, and you'll get more confident about it, and you'll get to a stage where you won't mind sharing it, or you won't be affected by what they say because it won't matter to you. I hope that helps. So think about what your intuition looks or feels like to you, and start inviting it and tuning into it and really acknowledging it. Pay attention to the negative ones. So if you get some kind of premonition, or if you're approaching a horse and your gut feeling is a bad one, definitely pay attention to those ones. When I was doing the survey that I did, I was speaking to one lady, and she said that one of her biggest issues was her own fear when it came to riding her horses. And she was setting herself up as her specialty was starting young horses, but she admitted to me that she was quite scared sometimes when she was riding, and scared of getting thrown off, scared of getting hurt. And this particular day, she was going to ride a young horse that she'd ridden a few times before, and just before she got on, she had this real gut feeling of, oh, something bad's going to happen. Well, she put it down to her fear, and she said to herself, oh, you're just being silly. When are you going to get over this fear? And she just kind of wrote it off, went ahead, got on the horse and rode, and it bucked her off. Now, you could say it was her fear that caused it, but it could well have been the other way around, that it was actually her intuition saying, this is not going to end well today, it might be better if you don't do this. So those intuitive hits, those gut feels, you really need to listen to. And if the owner is there expecting you to get on and ride their horse today, for instance, and maybe you feel that pressure, or you feel some kind of pressure to go ahead and do the thing anyway, whatever it was, take a moment, stop, breathe, clear your mind, get rid of that pressure, whatever it is, for a moment or a few moments, and tune in and really ask yourself, is it okay for me to do this today or not? And whatever answer you get, pay attention to it. It should be possible to, you know, take the horse and go and do some groundwork, and then think about getting on and see whether maybe it's in a better state then, or change your plan in some way. You know, I think it would be better if we did this today. This would be really beneficial for him today, or, you know, turn things around a little bit, so that you are not inviting something you're being warned not to do to happen. Pay attention to those. So how do you identify the messages that you're getting? Well, thinking about how you get your information. Is it a gut feel? Do you get pictures? Do you get words? Do you get emotions? You might get colors. Again, I'm interested to hear what you guys get. Is there a specific way that you get information when you're working with an animal? If you start noticing them and feeling into them and exploring them a little bit, they're going to happen more and more. You're also, as well as saying to those messages, I see you and I welcome you, you're also saying to the animal that you're working with, thanks for giving me that information. Thanks for communicating with me. I hear you. I'm paying attention. Keep doing that. It's a two-way communication. So start noticing how you get your information. Janet says she gets words and pictures, not often feelings. See, it's interesting. And here's the thing, everyone gets something different. I'm an animal communicator, but I say this often in my Facebook Lives and my blogs and things. I don't get streams of conversation. That's not how it works for me. I do get words and I get answers to questions, but I don't have horses or animals just chattering at me. I don't get that. I do get pictures, I do get emotions, and I do get colours. So it's different for everyone. Don't assume that you can't do it because you don't get such and such. Just notice what you do get. Tune into it more, thank it, and ask it to come again. And when it comes to increasing your animal communication skills, again, practice. It is most definitely a practiced skill, and doing it deliberately is going to solidify things and give you confidence in what you're getting. When I started, it took me 1.5 to 2 years of doing a lot of practice on as many client horses as were volunteered to me as possible, before I started to really understand the pattern of information that I get and what it meant, and to trust it, to trust the information that I was getting, and know that if I got such and such, that meant this. So I'll give you an example with horses. One of the things that people often want to know, and I check routinely in my animal communication sessions, and is a big deal with horses these days, is whether their horse has ulcers or not. And I started asking that question in my sessions, but in the beginning I thought I was getting the right answer, but I wasn't sure. So what I did was I asked some of my long-standing clients whether any of them could volunteer horses to me that I didn't know, because I work remotely, just people send me a photo, I don't know the animal. So I wanted to work with horses that I'd never worked with before, who they knew had been scoped at some point for ulcers, and they knew what the result was. I communicated with those horses and really kind of analysed what information and feelings I got when I asked that question about ulcers. And it turned out that for me, when I ask that question in a session, the response that I get is very subtle. But exploring it that way enabled me to get confident about that subtlety and really know, okay, when that tiny little thing happens, that's a yes, I know that horse does have ulcers, and then I can ask how serious they are. So that was a really useful thing for me to do. So that's worth thinking about too. How can I break down this question so that I get a clear answer, so that I know how I get that information and how to trust the information that I'm getting. It's really useful, especially in the beginning, to ask yes/no questions. So rather than saying or asking, how are you today, which is a very broad question, if you say, are you in any pain, that has a yes/no answer. You could, if you get a yes, you might then say, is the pain in your hind end, yes or no? Is it in your left hind? Is it below the hock? You know, you can start narrowing down to where the pain is. So asking yes/no questions, much more useful than asking something broad, which might not even be answerable. Again, you can notice where you feel the answer in your body too. You can also use muscle testing. Have any of you heard of kinesiology or muscle testing? Let me know. And if you haven't, I can do a quick little demo for you to show you how to use it. The other thing you can use if you're into it, and it might be, so Janet said yes, you've heard of it, Janet. How about Danielle? Have you heard of kinesiology or muscle testing? Oh, yay, excellent. Studying kinesiology, I love it. So use that in your work with animals. Really useful, really powerful, and it's another way of asking yes/no questions. I often do it using my fingers. So if I just kind of loosely grip my fingers together like that and say, my name is Trisha, my fingers spring apart. So that's a yes for me. And if I say, my name is Danielle, nope, it just feels like they stick even harder together. So that's a no. That's a yes, that's a no for me. So if I was working with an animal and said, are you in any pain? And I get a yes, then that enables me to, it gives me some information, and it might help direct what I do with that animal today. And you'll know, Danielle, there's a lot more to it than that, but it gives you some ideas of extra things that you can incorporate into your work to increase the information that you can get from an animal. You could even use a pendulum. Oh, I've only got a really big one here at the moment. Most people would use a little crystal pendulum. I have this huge big wooden one that I use for healing. But pendulums and dowsing can be another thing that you can use to ask yes/no questions about things that are going on. So quite a lot of different ways that you can increase your awareness, your ability to get information from an animal, and your ability to impart information to them by verbalizing or visualizing. Ways that I can help you further. Well, I've got loads of free stuff that you are very welcome to. There's lots of live videos on my Facebook business page. There are animal communication hints and tips on there, information about how I work, all kinds of things, interesting experiences that I had. So lots of videos you can watch. They're also on YouTube, and you can have a binge of them. I've got quite a few blogs on my website, trishawren.com. Again, animal communication tips, experiences I've had. The blog that I published just this last week was on horse loading problems, and it's kind of a step-by-step of basically everything I've learned to date with horses from a training point of view and an animal communication point of view. So that might be useful. So lots of blogs. And I've also got a weekly newsletter that you're very welcome to sign up to, where I put hints and tips and free stuff in there every week, and subscriber only offers, things like that. With my animal communication sessions, obviously I'm here if you ever want to book a session. And if you're having an issue with an animal that you're working with, and you feel like you've exhausted every possibility and you still don't know, you know, something's not quite right and you just can't pinpoint it, then I'm here if you want to use me as backup. I would suggest in those situations that you get the owner to pay, unless you're on some kind of retainer and you're just going to, you know, include it in the service that you're providing to them. That's okay as well. But bear me in mind for that. Maybe I can shed light on the missing piece of the puzzle. I also do one-to-one sessions, helping people to develop their spiritual skills, animal communication skills. And I do have an online group course that I run, and I'm looking at expanding that. So the next level of that course will be for animal professionals, so that we can dig a bit deeper and develop your skills more. So it's a group course over Zoom, which we're using here, and incorporates group meditations, exercises and homework for you to do, and all kinds of cool stuff. And we're nearly done. So any last questions from you guys? Do let me know if you have had any light bulb moments, what the biggest thing you learned from the webinar is. I'm really interested to know. Has this been useful for you? If you have any questions about anything I've spoken about, put them in the chat box and I'll answer them at the end. And while you're typing any last things, I'll just tell you about my little special offer that I have for you guys. And that is a one-to-one session with me. It would be over Zoom, and with both of our videos open and microphones on, so side to side, a bit like Skype. And we can record it too if we want to. And so you get 45 minutes of my undivided attention. Ask me whatever questions you want to ask me, whether it's business stuff, animal communication, intuition. We can meditate together, we can up-level you or see what needs to come next for you to develop your skills more. So that one-to-one session is on special for webinar sign-ups until the end of February, with 1/3 off the normal price. So you get 45 minutes for 100 New Zealand dollars, and I looked that up yesterday, and that was about $70 US roughly. I will very quickly type the link into the chat box for you. I'm trying to type quickly. Right. bit.ly one-to-one special. So that's the link if you want to book it. Only available till the end of this month, and if you use this coupon code, you'll get the 1/3 off. So I would love to work with you some more if you're interested, and look forward to doing that with you. So any last questions? Janet says, thank you, very helpful. Looking forward to seeing your website and your online advanced course. Cool. So yeah, what I'll be doing is adding everyone who signed up to the webinar. You will get added to my mailing list, and so you will get kept up to date with whatever comes next. And I'll keep you in a separate animal professionals list too, and you'll get notification as soon as whatever course that comes next for animal professionals is ready for anyone who wants to sign up to that. In the meantime, if you have any questions at all, let me know. Any way I can help you, and yeah, stay in touch. We'll see you around. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Nice to get to know new people, and keep connecting with your animals. See you next time. You're welcome, Danielle. Thanks for coming.